So, okay, today we're going to be reading from the Gosho number 5 from Teachings for Victory, volume 6. And then we got a volume 7 coming after this. So this is already 5. There's only 8 Goshos in this book. So we'll be through this and going into 7. Yeah. We're going to be going to Japan in January. And so don't worry about getting volume 7. We'll take care of it while we're there.
Oh.
Yeah, well, so
if we do, we do. Yeah.
If not, then we still have time to obtain it. But I think that they have definitely English language bookstore there. Okay, so that's done. All right, so the New Year's Gosho is the last Gosho in volume 1 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. I'm going to read the background. The entire Gosho is here, but I'm going to read the background here, and then I'm going to read the Gosho from here because it's easier for me. All right, so background from page 1138 of volume 1 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. This letter was written to the wife of Osamu in acknowledgement of offerings Nichiren Daishonin received from her at the beginning of the year. The precise year of this letter, however, remains unclear. And again, like we said last year when we read this on January 1st or whatever it was, this is a lunar New Year's, not just, January 1st New Year's, right? The precise year of this letter, however, remains unclear. Omosu derived his name from that of the area in which his estate was located, Omosu village in Fuji district of Suruga province. His full name was Ishikawa Shimbei Yoshiuki. His wife was the elder sister of Nanjo Tokimitsu. In this letter, Nichiren Daishonin explains the operative principle of the 10 worlds in a simple, poetic way, revealing that both Buddhahood and hell exist within the life of each individual. A person with a heart full of hatred experiences the world of hell. A person with faith in the Lotus Sutra experiences the world of Buddhahood. Okay, so going to the Gosho on page 1137 of volume 1, it's, like I said, the last one there. Starts, I have received 100 slabs of steamed rice cake and a basket of fruit. New Year's Day marks the first day, the first month, the beginning of the year, and the start of spring. A person who celebrates this day will accumulate virtue and be loved by all, just as the moon becomes full gradually, moving from west to east, and as the sun shines more brightly, traveling from east to west. First of all, as to the question of where exactly hell and the Buddha exist, one sutra states that hell exists underground, and another sutra says that the Buddha is in the west. Closer examination, however, reveals that both exist within our 5-foot body. This must be true because hell is in the heart of a person who inwardly despises his father and disregards his mother. It is like the lotus seed, which contains both blossom and fruit. In the same way, the Buddha dwells within our hearts. For example, flint has the potential to produce fire, and gems have intrinsic value. We ordinary people can see neither our own eyelashes, which are so close, nor the heavens in the distance. Likewise, we do not see that the Buddha exists in our own hearts. You may question how it is that the Buddha can reside within us when our bodies, originating from our parents' sperm and blood, are the source of the 3 poisons and the seed of carnal desires. But repeated consideration assures us of the truth of this matter. The pure lotus flower blooms out of the muddy pond. The fragrant sandalwood grows from the soil. The graceful cherry blossoms come forth from trees. The beautiful young Kuei Fei was born of a woman of low station, and the moon rises from behind the mountains to shed light on them. Misfortune comes from one's mouth and ruins one, but fortune comes from one's heart and makes one worthy of respect. The sincerity of making offerings to the Lotus Sutra at the beginning of the new year is like the cherry blossoms blooming from trees, a lotus unfolding in a pond, sandalwood leaves unfurling on the snow mountain, or the moon beginning to rise. Now Japan is in becoming an enemy of the Lotus Sutra has invited misfortune from 1,000 miles away. In light of this, it is clear that those who now believe in the Lotus Sutra will gather fortune from 10,000 miles away. The shadow is cast by the form, and just as the shadow follows the form, misfortune will befall the country whose people are hostile to the Lotus Sutra. The believers in the Lotus Sutra, on the other hand, are like the sandalwood with its fragrance. I will write you again, Nichiren. And I know he didn't put the I will write you again isn't in here. But again, do understand too, when Nichiren's saying Lotus Sutra, Lotus Sutra, Lotus Sutra, he's really talking about the Lotus Sutra of the latter day of the law. He's talking about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and he's talking about his teaching of the Buddhism of sowing. He's not referring to this 28 chapter Lotus Sutra, frankly. Although we use that as a reference for understanding his teaching of the Buddhism of sowing, and it's the foundation and structure that he uses in accommodating the Buddhism of sowing. So skipping the gray box and going straight to the lecture on page 58, all right, volume 6, page 58, lecture. A new era of worldwide Kosen Rufu has begun with bright hope. As Mother Earth embarks on another journey around the sun, courageous bodhisattvas of the earth, burning with a noble sense of mission, have risen into action with a great vow for Kosen Rufu in 192 countries and territories. Bodhisattvas of the earth are the disciples who share the same spirit as the Buddha. They stand up with the same vow as their teacher and carry on their teacher's courageous and persevering actions. We of the Soka family have ushered in the dawn of an exciting new year, more determined than ever before to make a fresh start and advance anew. In life, one must have hope. And he's going to make a big important point here. So listen to what he has to say. In life, one must have hope. Now, when he says one must have hope, what is he really saying then? That's another way of saying what about our practice? Faith. Because we believe that our prayers will be answered, okay? That's the hope. Yes. My mentor, second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda, declared in a New Year's message, he went on to speak of the nobility of living out one's life with the great altruistic hope for the happiness of all humanity, refusing to be defeated by any adversity. And what's he talking about there? He went on to speak of the nobility of living out one's life. Okay, he's not just talking about something that only pertains to himself, or he wouldn't be speaking about it to a group, right? Is what he's trying to teach them is something that applies to everyone. So this, the nobility of living out one's life with the altruistic hope for the happiness of all humanity. What is that? Yeah, but what does Shakabuku lead to? What's the ultimate goal? No, that's actually, again, you're all saying the right thing, but it's Kosen Rufu. It's not just our own happiness, it's everyone's happiness equally. That's the nobility of it. Yes. You know, there's no nobility in just, it's all for me. Okay? The altruistic hope. What's altruism? Do you guys know? Because that's sort of a difficult English word. Altruism is a sense of caring and having empathy for others and trying to help them. That's what altruism is. Somebody that gave a lot to charity, or somebody that worked in hospitals as a volunteer would be somebody functioning out of a sense of altruism towards other human beings. You understand? Okay. So he went on to speak of the nobility of living out one's life with the great altruistic hope for the happiness of all humanity, the great desire for Kosen Rufu, refusing to be defeated by any adversity. And why does he throw that in there? Refusing to be defeated by any adversity. Because he's really talking about Buddhahood. And you can't get to Buddhahood as an actual life state, actual Ichinen Sanzen, without never being defeated by adversity, which is going to be there continuously to try and keep you from being able to make it. That's the thing that a lot of people become confused about, is why do I seem to still have issues that I'm trying to resolve, and why do I still have problems, or why hasn't this problem solved itself while I'm chanting, I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to. This hope is the confidence that that's all in play, and because it hasn't happened at this moment, at this time, you will resolve it in the course of never giving up. Yes. Never giving up is the part of refusing to be defeated by any adversity. Okay? So he goes on, specifically citing the lofty life of Nichiren Daishonin, which we're supposed to emulate as his disciples, correct? We're supposed to have the same altruism, the same desire for Kosen Rufu, the same mind as Nichiren. Yes. He says, the life of Nichiren Daishonin, he noted with profound emotion, which means when he started talking, President Toda started crying. She choked up, like I do all the time, okay? He noted with profound emotion the way that the Daishonin held fast to every one of his youthful hopes and dreams and brought them to fruition in his own life is a truly monumental achievement, shining like a magnificent palace. When I recall these words of my mentor, I am again deeply struck by the phrase, magnificent palace. Turn your life into a magnificent palace, something that reflects the grandeur and perfection of your faith and the teaching that you ascribe to. Building a magnificent palace of victory in life. That's attaining Buddhahood in your present form, by the way. All right, top of page 59, first column. Let us take the Daishonin's selfless dedication to fulfilling the great vow to propagate the Lotus Sutra as an eternal model and source of inspiration. Let us overcome every obstacle and each build a truly magnificent palace of victory in life wherever we are around the globe. Mr. Toda, so again, he's saying, be of the same mind as Nichiren, live your life as much as you can, exactly as he did. Mr. Toda taught his New Year's message to a close. Mr. Toda brought his New Year's message to a close as follows: let us plant our feet firmly on the ground and live with bright hope. At the same time, let us also help others plant their feet firmly on the ground and have bright hope in their lives as well. So what's plant your feet firmly on the ground? Huh? Actually, it means practicing. It means doing the things, not just having a sense of belief or a heart for it. Do you understand? You have to take action or it's all meaningless. It's BS. It's happy talk. Okay? So that's what he's talking about. He's saying, let us all have firm and strong faith and practice, and at the same time, help others do the same. Because if we don't do that, we're not following the prescription for attaining Buddhahood in our present form. You've got to do Kosen Rufu. All right? He says, continue the middle of first column, page 59. Let's advance with the strong resolve to make this year a year of brilliant hope and abundant happiness for ourselves and others. In this chapter, I will discuss the Daishonin's New Year's Gosho so that we can again study the essence of Nichiren Buddhism. So he's saying, this Gosho contains the essence of Nichiren Buddhism, as many Gosho do, but this is going to be another one where we're going to get a chance for Nichiren to actually be the one verbalizing the means by which you perceive this. Okay, continuing with reading the Gosho again. Sincere offerings for the new year. I have received 100 slabs of steamed rice cake and a basket of fruit. New Year's Day marks the first day, the first month, the beginning of the year, and the start of spring. A person who celebrates this day will accumulate virtue and be loved by all, just as the moon becomes full gradually, moving from west to east, and as the sun shines more brightly, traveling from east to west. President Ikeda continues then. Top of page 59, second column. The New Year's Gosho is addressed to a follower named the wife of Mamosu, who sent Nichiren Daishonin 100 steamed rice cakes and a basket of fruit one New Year. The Japanese title translates literally as Steamed Rice Cake Gosho. The Daishonin mentions steamed rice cakes in other writings as well, always around the New Year. Steamed rice cakes were incised with a cross so that they could be easily divided easily into smaller portions. They were part of the New Year celebration in the Daishonin's time, just as they are in Japan today. The recipient of this letter was the wife of Ishikawa no Hyoe, also known as Lord Omosu, the steward of Omosu village in Fuji district of Suruga province. She was the elder sister of Nanjo Tokimitsu. Omosu village lay next to Ueno village, where the Tokimitsu lived, making it easy for brother and sister to stay in contact. This letter is thought to have been composed in 1281. And don't forget, so her mom, the person that this is written to, her father was also a disciple of Nichiren's, okay? And she had a younger brother, or she had a younger brother that also was a follower of Nichiren, but unfortunately died when he was 16 years old. Omosu village lay next, making it easy for brother and sister to stay in contact. This letter is thought to have been composed in 1281 at Minobu, the year before Nichiren's death. Tokimitsu was facing great difficulties at the time, we talked about this last time, owing to the ongoing Atsuhara persecution. The authorities forced him to pay heavy, punitive taxes and supply unpaid labor simply because he was Nichiren's follower. In addition, the wife of Omosu had lost a beloved daughter to illness in the spring of 1278. In another writing, the Daishonin refers to the daughter as the young lady, the daughter of the lay priest Ishikawa no Hyoe. And that's from WND, page 902, volume 1, page 902. It seems that she was unmarried. The daughter had sent the Daishonin several letters and received guidance from him. Before she died, she wrote saying it would probably be her last letter to him and expressed her serene state of mind as she faced death. How brave and pure-hearted she was, okay? And you should really read this Gosho, The Teaching for the Latter Day, because it's a great Gosho. It's also, it's very condensed with a lot of really great truth. And I think you'll be encouraged if you take the time to do it. So do check out that Gosho on page 902. No doubt, her mother greeted each new year with the resolve to remain steadfast in her Buddhist practice as a disciple of Nichiren Daishonin, not only for her own sake, but also on behalf of her departed daughter. So once again, why do we practice to the end of our lives? For our sake, but also for the sake of our parents, our family, okay? All right, because when we attain Buddhahood, they're all locked in, because they'll never get out of our circle of influence, and we'll never not be Buddhists. Understand? All right, as this new year approached, she must have renewed that determination as she sent the Daishonin these offerings. The Daishonin, in turn, wholeheartedly praises her sincerity and vibrant resolve. Making every day a fresh start, page 60, first column. New Year's Day marks the start of a new day, a new month, and a new year. In the East, since ancient times, therefore, it has been known as the Day of Three Beginnings, a new day, a new month, and a new year. In Japan, according to the old lunar calendar, New Year's Day also marks the beginning of spring. All in all, it is a very festive day of many new beginnings. The Daishonin says that a person who upholds the mystic law and celebrates this day will steadfastly accumulate virtue and benefit and come to be loved by all, just as the moon gradually grows fuller and the sun shines more brightly as it rises in the sky. Okay, did you understand what he just said there? I'll read it again. The Daishonin says that a person who upholds the mystic law and celebrates this day will steadfastly accumulate virtue and benefit, because every year You're remembering to begin anew. You're refreshing your determination for being a bodhisattva of the earth, a disciple of Nichiren, and for the establishment of Kosen Rufu. And if you live your life that way year after year, virtue and benefit will accumulate, and you will also transform into becoming a person loved by all. Just as the moon gradually grows fuller and the sun shines more brightly as it rises higher in the sky, because you become a Buddha in your present form if you follow that two-sentence formula at the beginning of that paragraph. The day, so again, he doesn't qualify all this, but what he's saying is very understandable. The first day of the new year is a day of beginnings. New day, new year, whatever. Start of a new month, new year, and a new day, right? Okay. The first day of the new year is a day of beginnings. Everyone can start the new year with a fresh new determination. So no matter what you've done in the past that you didn't really do, you had the determination to do, but you didn't do, don't give up on yourself. You sustain that determination, you maintain that determination, and your prayers will be answered.
Yes.
It is a wonderful opportunity to reawaken ourselves to the Buddhist spirit of true cause. The spirit of always moving forward from the present moment on. When we do so, our lives are sure to overflow with joy. Because what is the spirit of true cause? It's the truth that cause and effect are simultaneous. The simultaneity of cause and effect is what cause and effect actually is. It's not cause and effect separated. Every cause has effect attached to it. Every effect has cause attached to it. Okay? So if you are reawakening yourself to the Buddhist spirit of true cause, you realize that whatever you've been aspiring for that hasn't yet been accomplished, if you continue and remain steadfast in your faith, it will be. All right? This is all about, again, that hope issue. Not being pissed off because you haven't had all of your prayers answered at this point in time in your life. You're not dead yet. All right? The Daishonin placed deep significance on in the Chinese character Hajime, meaning, did I say that right? Hajime? Okay. Meaning first, start, or beginning. As one example, in the Blessings of the Lotus Sutra, the Daishonin writes, in this entire country of Japan, I am the only one who has been chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. I am like the single speck of dust that marks the beginning of Mount Sumeru, or the single drop of dew that spells the start of the great ocean. In the second column, page 60, in the middle, in the Japanese beginning and start, in this passage are written with the same character, Hajime. I can't help feeling, so he's expressing, President Kate is expressing, this is my opinion. I can't help feeling that the Daishonin's use of this character conveys his impassioned spirit to stand alone and initiate an intense struggle for Kosen Rufu, not for himself to get a better crib or to get a temple or to get a greater following, but for this to become something that's universal throughout the world. In addition, in the object of devotion for observing the mind, Nichiren explains that he was the first to establish the Gohonzon. He is the true Buddha of Mappo. Let us then strive every day as we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo before the Gohonzon to begin anew, summoning up fresh life force. The purpose of our Buddhist practice is to lead lives of complete fulfillment. I'll say it again. The purpose of our Buddhist practice is to lead lives of complete fulfillment, illuminated by the morning sun of time without beginning and the spirit that every day is New Year's Day. Every day is a new beginning. Every day is filled with hope. Every day is the continuation of my battle to win against all devilish functions. Every day I am the Buddha exactly as I am. Okay, page 61. Hell and the Buddha and Buddhahood both exist within us, because that's why we're able to say that every day. Going back to the Gosho. First of all, as to the question of where exactly hell and the Buddha exist. One sutra states that hell exists underground, and another sutra says that the Buddha is in the west. Closer examination, however, reveals that both exist in our 5-foot body. This must be true because hell is in the heart of a person who inwardly despises his father and disregards his mother. Continuing with President Keita's lecture. And again, this whole thing about hell is underneath in the ground. I mean, Christianity says the same thing. I think there are many religious beliefs that believe that the bad place is below the ground and the good place is somewhere else.
Right.
And what he just clarified there is it's not below the ground and it's not somewhere else. It's right here. Okay? Don't look for it anywhere else. The Daishonin must have regarded the wife of Amosu's sincere spirit, her efforts to support him and keep striving based on faith, as incredibly noble and beautiful. After all, she's been through the pain of losing a daughter, who was also the Daishonin's disciple, by the way. To me, and again, President Keita, once again, it's like he's at the table, he's saying, let me talk very casually here. To me, he's expressing his opinion. It seems he is saying that he saw the brilliantly shining Buddha in her heart. In this letter, he assures her that the Buddha is not to be found somewhere far away, but is present within her own heart. In the next section, he explains in an accessible way this ultimate essence of life, the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, because that's what that is. One of the most important Buddhist doctrines. It's what allows us to become Buddhas in our present form. The very bottom of the first column on page 61. To illustrate this point, he chooses as examples the life states of hell and Buddhahood, the two extremes among the 10 worlds. These states of life, which to our ordinary mortal eyes seem the farthest from our everyday existence, are actually both present within our hearts. From the perspective of the widely held notions of hell and the Buddha at the time, this was a radical departure. The established Buddhist schools commonly taught that hell was a realm located somewhere beneath the earth, and that the Buddha dwelled in some far distant realm, such as in the case of the Pure Land Nembutsu school's Amida Buddha, who resided in the Pure Land of Perfect Bliss in the West. It was widely believed, therefore, that when people died, they either fell into an underground hell or were reborn in Amida's Pure Land. That is, both hell and the Buddha were regarded as states outside of and apart from one's own life. Okay? They're not something that you can access and have impact on. Okay? But in this letter, Nichiren states that both hell and the Buddha are right here in our 5-foot body and in the heart. First of all, by using the word our, he indicates that these states are within all of us, not himself included, okay, without any distinction. Second, so everybody, that's why we can't hold animus against anyone. We've got to consider everybody as what they really are, Buddhas, exactly as they are. Second, the world of hell and Buddhahood are not far away. They exist in our lives, in the lives of real people living right here and now. He first gives an example of how the world of hell is a potential within one's own life, describing it, for instance, as the heart of a person who inwardly despises his father and disregards his mother. And I've mentioned this a few times. You can't have bad feelings for your parents because they're your parents. They brought you, they are the reason that you breathe. Naturally, there are all kinds of relationships. The President Keita is going to go ahead and qualify that. Naturally, there are all kinds of relationships between parents and children, and simply honoring one's parents isn't the solution to every problem. Isn't the solution to every problem. So he says this isn't about you get brownie points from honoring your parents, and you're doing it for the purpose of the brownie points. It's your heart that is important. You're doing this to honor your parents because you understand the significance of your parents in relationship to your own life. He continues at the very top of page 62, first column. But the fact remains that without our parents, we would not exist in this world. End of subject. That's all there is to it. Harboring unreasonable animosity toward our parents who gave birth to and lovingly nurtured us could lead to undermining the very foundation of our existence and negating the value of our own previous lives. So it's really deep stuff. He's not just saying this to be Jesus, okay, to be holy. He's saying this because this is cause and effect, and this is how you create karma. And the karma that you create is experienced either as hell or Buddhahood or somewhere in between. But you did it all. And it's nothing outside of you. And how you are able to start to manifest the change that creates the transformation is to understand what he's saying when he says it. Rather than, oh, that's cool. That's cool. We read this too superficially too often. That's why President Kate has to give these lectures rather than just say, go read the New Year's Gosho. You'll understand. Well, maybe not if you just read the New Year's Gosho, okay, without anybody helping you understand it more deeply. That's why there are mentors, okay? And that's why we need mentors. And that's who we're all supposed to become, is mentors. So we can't mentor anybody if we don't understand it ourselves. Yeah. All right? That's why it's so important. Kosen Rufu. For us to do Kosen Rufu, we have to understand the teaching. Okay? Or we can't pass it on correctly. Yeah. We can give somebody a book. You read it now. No, that's not the deal. All right? He says, if we lose that foundation, we could also end up losing our sense of self-worth and meaning, our self-confidence and hope. The Daishonin warns that this fundamental form of suffering, which is what? A sense of self-worth, meaning of, what's the meaning of my life? I mean, these are very common questions and pains that everybody experiences until they have resolved the sense of what those answers actually are, frankly. All right? The Daishonin warns that this fundamental form of suffering represents the world of hell, and that it is the basic cause of unhappiness. All right? The law of cause and effect operating in the depths of life is strict. Much more strict than we perceive it to be. Because we give ourselves passes all the time, but cause and effect did not. Yes. We justify all kinds of bullshit all the time, but cause and effect did not. Right. Okay? My friend could forgive me. That didn't change the causes I've made in my life if I don't accept that forgiveness sincerely and reciprocate it in some way. Right. Do you understand? It's about being the Buddha in your present form. He's going to talk about the Lotus Sutra in a worldview kind of a way, and he's going to really say it's not really just about that 28-chapter writing that Kumarajiva translated one of the translations of, that everything that we do is based on. He really talked about what it represents as a thought process and a perspective of life that is actualized in society, actualized in people's lives as human beings. That's the important element of the Lotus Sutra, okay? Not a holy text. It's not a holy text like that. It's a guide for us to utilize to become Buddhas just as we are, utilizing the latter day of the law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, you couldn't do that prior to the latter day of the law, even with the Lotus Sutra. Realize that. That's what the Daishonin teaches. That's why we call what we do actual Ichinen Sanzen rather than theoretical Ichinen Sanzen. The law of cause and effect operating in the depths of our life is strict. It may not be immediately clear when we just examine the causes, but they invariably produce effects, whether negative or positive. And you get old enough, you see that very clearly, much more clearly than you might when you're younger. The Daishonin compares this to the lotus seed, which simultaneously contains both blossom and fruit. Continuing, page 62 at the first column. The world of Buddhahood also exists within the world of humanity, right? What's Ichinen Sanzen? 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, right? So what does that principle qualify? You live in the 9 worlds. All 9 worlds contain the 10th world. Nothing is separated, right? The world of Buddhahood also exists within the world of humanity.
Right.
Okay? So if you don't feel like anything more than a human being, you still have Buddhahood in you. Okay? In the following sentence, the Daishonin states, page 62, first column, bottom, the Buddha dwells within our hearts. Okay? And don't forget, hearts and mind, the Japanese for this would have been heart and mind would have been the same word. Okay? He then offers examples to explain the most difficult to comprehend fact that the world of Buddhahood also exists within the world of humanity. Human beings aren't perfect and wonderful, are they necessarily? No. Okay, so he writes, for example, flint has the potential to produce fire, and gems have intrinsic value. When cold flint is struck, it produces sparks. When gemstones are polished, they reveal their inherent worth. You know, being in the business, you could see a diamond, and a diamond before it's been faceted and polished is nothing to really get excited about. It's really actually kind of like, this is worth that much? It's actually after it's been formed to reveal its intrinsic value, just as our Buddhahood being revealed validates the intrinsic value of our life. And then understanding that as being the intrinsic value of all lives. All lives matter. In the same way, though it is not immediately obvious, the state of Buddhahood most certainly resides within the lives of ordinary human beings, the Daishonin says. The Daishonin says. He continues, we ordinary people, second column, page 62, can see neither our own eyelashes, which are so close, nor the heavens in the distance. So we can't see or perceive this in the absence of having attained that state of realization. But we can achieve that state of realization. There is the proof of actual fact. There are people that attain Buddhahood in their present form. And when they do, this all becomes very clear. All right? We ordinary people can neither see our own eyelashes, which are so close, nor the heavens in the distance. Our eyelashes are too close to our eyes for us to see them, and the far reaches of space are too remote to be visible. We don't even think about them as being in our environment, but they are part of our environment. The far reaches of space are part of our environment. Right? Right? We're not just talking about our solar system when we're talking about what we're talking about. We're not talking about the Milky Way galaxy. We're talking about Kuan. So you can't get to the end. All right? In the same way, it is hard for us to believe and accept that the world of Buddhahood also exists within the world of humanity. The Daishonin acknowledges the fact that some may question how the supremely noble state of Buddhahood could possibly exist in the lives of ordinary people steeped in the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness. In other words, it is quite difficult for most people to accept the truth that Buddhahood, the same unsurpassed life state of the Buddha, could in fact exist within the mortal body lives of ordinary people burdened with problems and sufferings. I'm repeating myself, President Ikeda says, but the most difficult aspect of the principle of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds is being convinced. Convinced. So that doesn't mean understanding the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. That means that you're living it and you believe it to the degree that you're constantly rejuvenating it in front of the Gohonzon, because it doesn't sustain itself in the absence of that. It's steadfast, day in, day out faith to the last moment of your life that allows you to have that perception. I'm repeating myself. I go again, this last paragraph, second column, page 62. I'm repeating myself, but the most, and why is he repeating himself? Because he is repeating himself. He's already said this twice.
This is important.
Because he knows that you're hearing the words and you're just like every other time. 9 out of 10 people that are listening to this or reading to this are just their words. Mm-hmm. They're just reflecting off of you. And that's why he's going out of his way to try and say, please believe me. I know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Okay? I'm repeating myself, but the most difficult aspect of the principle of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds is being convinced that the world of Buddhahood is contained within the world of humanity. That's why I can say I am the Buddha in my present form. Mm. Namely, that it exists right here in our lives, in our ordinary bodies, and hearts. Nothing special. Nichiren also makes this point in the Object of Devotion for Observing the Mind, where he says, quote, the mutual possession of the 10 worlds is as difficult to believe as fire existing in a stone or flowers within a tree. So he qualifies. This is really hard to actually be convinced of. You might be aware of it or understand there's a principle as such, or the words exist saying this is so. But the being convinced is a whole different matter. That requires doubt-free faith. All right? The mutual possession of the 10 worlds, top of page 63, is as difficult to believe as fire existing in a stone or flowers within a tree. Yet under the right conditions, such phenomena actually occur and are believable. To believe that the Buddha exists within the human world is the most difficult thing of all. As difficult as believing that fire exists in water or water in fire. That's from the Object of Devotion for Observing the Mind. The Daishonin saying and qualifying that. That's why you need the Gohonzon. That's why I just said you will not sustain that state if you don't practice every day. That's why we need our feet firmly on the ground. That's what he's talking about. We don't have our head up in the air of like, oh, I'm the Buddha. Hey, you're the Buddha too. No, that's not what he's talking about. That's not what he's talking about. This requires daimoku to the Gohonzon. From the Gosho, the pure lotus blossoming from the muddy water. Because that's where it blossoms from, baby. It's from the mud. Yes. The pure lotus flower blooms out of the muddy pond. The fragrant sandalwood grows from the soil. The graceful cherry blossoms come forth from the trees, and the moon rises from behind the mountains to shed light on them. Misfortune comes from one's mouth and ruins one, but fortune comes from one's heart and makes one worthy of respect. The sincerity of making offerings to the Lotus Sutra at the beginning of the new year is like cherry blossoms blooming from trees, a lotus unfolding in a pond, sandalwood leaves unfurling on the snow mountains, or the moon beginning to rise. Bottom of page 63, first column. Can the supremely pure life state of Buddhahood exist in our impure physical bodies? The Daishonin's conclusion, after repeated consideration, is that it does. That's why we have such a thing as the Buddhism of sowing. Because Nichiren took it upon himself to understand and clarify why things were the way they were when he started in the priesthood. That's what started him off on his path and his quest. And then when he came to the realization, could never stop until he had done everything that he could for the entire time of his whole life. He was never able to retire. Neither am I. The Daishonin's conclusion after repeated consideration is that indeed it does. To explain, he offers such analogies as the pure lotus flower blooming out of the muddy pond, the fragrant sandalwood growing from the soil, cherry blossoms coming forth from trees, and the moon rising from behind the mountains. The pure lotus blossoms from muddy water. The pure lotus blossoms from muddy water. A lotus seed may be buried in mud for thousands of years until, when conditions are right, it sprouts, grows, and sends forth buds. Every beautiful cherry blossoms come from dark, gnarled trees. Enduring the harsh winter, in spring, they bloom beautifully with hope. The Daishonin is saying that no matter how trying our circumstances, and I'm qualifying this because I know a lot of people that are going through a lot of shit. The world is filled with a lot of people going through a lot of shit. How's James? Going through a lot of shit. Everybody's going through a lot of shit. It's your life condition that supersedes the reality of what's happening in this moment, and that is expressed by happiness or unhappiness, not the circumstance. Really. It's life condition. That's what the heart is important. That's what he's saying here. Let me say it again. The pure lotus blossoms from muddy water. Our life is muddy water. It's bullshit, okay? We got problems, we got wants, we got desires, we got confusion. How do we remedy that? He's basically saying that if we have faith, it will change. It will transform. And he's talking about the cherry blossoms coming from the gnarled black trees, dark trees, and all of that stuff. He's saying that the Daishonin is saying that no matter how trying our circumstances, and everybody's circumstances are different, they're all based on the reflective karma of each individual, flowers of happiness will emerge from our lives and adorn us. These explanations must have been immensely encouraging to the wife of Momosu, who had experienced so many trials in life. And why does he throw that kind of stuff in there? Because he's basically saying you should be encouraged too. Okay? If you're not, then you're not listening to what's being said. You're certainly not listening with any kind of faith. He's saying again, these explanations must have been immensely encouraging to the wife of Momosu, who had experienced so many trials in life, just like we have. So we should be encouraged by this as well. In his analogies of the lotus flower, sandalwood tree, and cherry blossoms, the Daishonin uses very active phrases such as blooms out, grows from, and come forth. His description of a moon that rises from and sheds light on is likewise rich in action. Dormant potentials that are actually based on karma, cause and effect, emerge and blossom, and they start functioning dynamically. Dynamically. That means that they speed up. They start emerging and manifesting in a way that is much quicker than they would have otherwise. In the record of the orally transmitted teachings, the Daishonin explains the term attain Buddhahood, saying attain means to open or reveal. It means that Buddhahood is not something that you get, you find access to. You reveal, you open up what already is inside you. No doubt, at the bottom of page 63, second column, no doubt upon reading this part of the letter, the wife of Omosu was delighted to learn that the pure and infinitely noble state of Buddhahood existed within her own life. The fundamental cause of our emotions, of happiness and suffering, are not something outside us, but exist ultimately in our hearts. The pain of hell and the joy of Buddhahood are nowhere but within the depths of our own lives. Misfortune comes from one's mouth and fortune comes from one's heart. Page 64, first column. In the next sentence, the Daishonin discusses misfortune and fortune. Misfortune comes from one's mouth and ruins one. A familiar Japanese proverb also says the mouth is the root of misfortune. But here the Daishonin is not merely imparting worldly advice, like you're better off to keep your mouth shut. Be careful what you say around them. That's not what he's saying at all. He's not talking about that. He's talking about slander. Okay? He's talking about creating karma. That's how we ruin ourselves. Okay? Not by being careful about what we say around people. That's not what he's saying. He is, okay, the mouth is the root of misfortune. But here that I showed is not merely imparting worldly advice. He is referring to the workings of cause and effect, because that's all it is. Shakyamuni Buddha offered a similar warning. A person that is born with an axe in his mouth. He whose speech is unwholesome cuts himself with this axe. The consequences of the negative karma we create with our mouths, for instance, when we slander the Buddhahood of others by not treating them equally. Okay? There's all kinds of things I could say right now that I won't, that are examples of that. But when we look at others and see them as others, other than fellow human beings, we're off on the wrong track. Okay? That's what's making our karma that's coming out as unhappiness. We're not thinking and functioning as Buddhas when we perceive people that way. Ever. Ever. Unless they're guilty of slander, and then we're admonishing them for their own sake. That's called shakabuku. And so there's a whole different perception of I'm better than you versus let me help you get it straight. There's two different things going on in your head at that point. Okay. For instance, in the form of derogatory marks, defamatory speech, and lies return to us and can bring about our ruin. They will return to you. They will, even though the lie may not have anything to do with when it returns, it comes back as something else that's hurtful. But you created the cause of the hurt that comes back to you. No one else did. 100% of the time. This passage truly describes the painful sufferings that results manifesting in our lives as the world is of hell. In contrast, fortune comes from one's heart, second column, page 64, and makes one worthy of respect. The Daishonin says, this is the Buddhist principle of happiness. The Daishonin teaches it is the heart that is important. We must strive to manifest our Buddhahood in our hearts and in our lives. Okay, so what did that say? We must strive to manifest our Buddhahood in our hearts and in our lives. It means it's not going to come out naturally. It's not going to be an epiphany of like, and I became Jesus. No, we have to strive. What is striving? It's over and over and over. It doesn't stop when you're striving. You're striving until you achieve. When you achieve Buddhahood, you don't have to worry about this because you don't think that way anymore. Okay? Your mind is clear. Your realization is manifested. You've transformed. Okay? But until then, we keep manufacturing our own bullshit. We keep manufacturing our own misfortune, our own suffering. And then we want to paste it on somebody else, which just created more. Because that's delusion and that's BS. And we can never resolve our suffering by blaming it on something outside of ourselves. The solution doesn't exist outside ourselves. It's our behavior as human beings. Okay? And that's what he's talking about, be the Buddha. So he's saying, we must strive to manifest our Buddhahood in our hearts, which would be we must strive to become Buddhas in our present form and in our lives. As long as this fundamental spirit remains strong, it will not be broken or swayed by external factors. We will not be thrown off the course of getting in front of the Gohonzon every single day. And our faith will not be weakened by the adversity of difficulty. In early Buddhist scriptures, one of the many honorable titles by which Shakyamuni Buddha was known was the Happy One. The aim of Buddhism is to enable each of us to establish a state of absolute happiness. Next, the Daishonin again mentions the sincerity of making offerings to the Lotus Sutra at the start of the new year, underscoring how infinitely noble it is. He also likens such a sincere heart to cherry blossoms blooming from trees, a lotus unfolding in a pond, sandalwood leaves unfurling on the snow mountain, or the moon beginning to rise, echoing his earlier analogies for Buddhahood. The seed of Buddhahood had most certainly sprouted in the heart of the wife of Omosu, and the Daishonin was clearly aware of this. The seed had sprouted. That's all that's necessary. Once that seed is sprouted, it can never die. It will grow. It will manifest. It will become a mentor. Those embracing the mystic law are sure to become happy. On the page of top of page 65. Yeah, we're almost getting there. Top of page 65, first column, going back to the Gosho. Now, Japan, in becoming an enemy of the Lotus Sutra, has invited misfortune from 1,000 miles away. In light of this, it is clear that those who now believe in the Lotus Sutra will gather fortune from 10,000 miles away. The shadow is cast by the form, and just as the shadow follows the form, misfortune will befall the country whose people are hostile to the Lotus Sutra. The believers in the Lotus Sutra, on the other hand, are like the sandalwood with its fragrance, which is shared, which permeates outside of itself to others. You follow? Okay, that's like telling other people about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's your sandalwood fragrance, okay? The German poet Karl Busse wrote, "Over the mountains, a distant journey hence, happiness resides, the people say." Where is happiness? Can we become happy? President Kate is asking. Our lives, in the middle of page 65, first column, our lives, and indeed the entire history of the human race, can be described in a certain sense as a ceaseless journey in search of the cherished goal of happiness. Nichiren Daishonin declares, those who now believe in the Lotus Sutra will gather fortune from 10,000 miles away. Here, he assures us that when we believe in the Lotus Sutra, the Gohonzon, and live out our lives to the best of our ability, we are certain to become happy. We will never sink into misery, but attain happiness without fail, no matter what our present situation, no matter how things have been in our lives until now. If we persevere earnestly in faith, we will enjoy unsurpassed good fortune and benefit beyond measure and lead lives of deep fulfillment. So I've got to reread that paragraph because, again, he's very cleverly qualifies this. First of all, when he's talking about the Lotus Sutra, he is talking about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and the Gohonzon and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are the same thing, okay? And he's saying that when we believe, he assures us here, President Kate is saying, Nichiren Daishonin has assured you, he has promised you that when you believe in the Gohonzon and live out your life to the best of your ability, you don't have to become a saint, you don't have to become something that's famous, you will become happy. You will never sink into misery, but attain happiness without fail. I'm paraphrasing now to put this into a first person, because that's what he's saying. If the Daishonin was here, he would be saying it the way I'm saying it right now, reading this paragraph. No matter what our present situation, no matter how things have been in our lives until now, and I know some people that have had some pretty shitty things happen in their lives, even though they practice.
Yes.
Okay? So that's what he's talking about. It's not about the circumstance. It's talking about your life condition, which perceives the truth of life, which says it's not about the circumstance. It's about what I brought into this world and what I take out, what I leave as. Until, it says, no matter what our present situation, no matter how things have been in our lives until now, if we persevere earnestly, if we never give up, if we have mugi washing, doubt-free faith, and we continue without fail, we will enjoy unsurpassed good fortune and benefit beyond measure and lead lives of deep fulfillment, because we will have attained Buddhahood in our present form in that process. Those who now believe in the Lotus Sutra means those who bring forth the world of Buddhahood inherent in their 5-foot body and in their hearts. Those who chant Daimoku, those who are of the same mind as Nichiren, those who pray for Kosen Rufu, who care about others, who don't discriminate amongst anyone. Okay, such people have entered the great path of attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. With their lives shining like the noblest of Buddhas, they can never be unhappy. And I have some pretty difficult things happen. But all I have to do is chant about those difficult things, and I realize, boy, they're not difficult at all. I'm so fortunate. I'm so lucky. I am, look this, you know, really. We ourselves embody happiness. It's not up to anything outside of our heart, our mind. Same thing.
Yes.
Okay? No one can take that happiness away. Why? Because it's internalized. It comes from the original state that is part of our, the original state of our life. Okay? No one can destroy it because it's indestructible. As practitioners of the mystic law, we possess an incredibly strong magnet that attracts good fortune and happiness. Boy, I sure have. That is why the heavenly deities and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and 3 existences gather around to protect us. With the most powerful life force, one can stand surrounded with the most powerful life force, one can stand surrounded by good fortune and dwell at ease in a beautiful, magnificent palace of happiness, regardless of the situation. Such happiness is not self-centered. Rather, it is inexhaustible happiness, happiness that can embrace both oneself and others. It's not for you, it's for everybody, including you.
Yes.
The believers in the Lotus Sutra, on the other hand, are like the sandalwood with its fragrance, says the Daishonin. The lives of those who dedicate themselves to the mystic law emit the wonderful fragrance of good fortune and benefit. They propagate the correct teaching, which enfolds not only themselves, but others as well. Propagating the correct teaching. Bottom of page 65. Embraced by the Daishonin's vast state of life, the wife of Omosu must have felt a great sense of hope and confidence growing within her heart. Top of page 66, and we're almost there. The SGI is a gathering of experts in the art of happiness. The Russian author Leo Tolstoy, in his famous novel War and Peace, tells of a central character who, while being held captive and stripped of all freedom, awakens to the fact that human beings are created for happiness and that happiness lies within. This is the same realization as President Toda, but from a deeper perspective of actual original source. It's not philosophical, it's real. It is an immense source of pride for me that so many of my beloved members in Japan and around the world say that through practicing Nichiren Buddhism, they have become happier than they could have ever imagined possible. Cherishing the Daishonin's words, those who now believe in the Lotus Sutra will gather fortune from 10,000 miles away. There are now countless experts in the art of happiness in the SGI. They have triumphed over the darkness of karma and suffering, of such as financial hardship, illness, personal weaknesses, and trouble with relationships. The mystic law is the great teaching that enables us to transform any hardship into happiness, because there's nothing better than kicking devil ass. There's no greater source of happiness than kicking devil ass. To make something impossible possible? Ooh, what a rush that is. That, I got to say it again. The mystic law is the great teaching that enables us to transform, because it's just a flip side deal. You're just flipping it, okay? That helps us transform any hardship into happiness. As the Daishonin assures us when he says, misfortune will change into fortune. When he assures us, once again, that word assures, doubt-free faith. Misfortune will change into fortune. Nichiren Buddhism enables those who have suffered the most to attain the greatest happiness. Mr. Toda solemnly observed that people's lives can move in either of 2 directions, toward decline and ruin, or toward improvement and growth. And every day is faced with that same directional pull. You can either continue to manifest in a greater state, or you can start to decline. During the early days of our movement, there were many women whose lives before joining the Soka Gakkai were so filled with suffering that they had forgotten the very word happiness. Others, hearing a discussion meeting that practicing Nichiren Buddhism would enable them to become happy without fail, felt a flame of hope ignite in their lives for the first time in a very long time. None became happy overnight. Let's say it again. None became happy overnight because they had to make the causes. This wasn't about believing or hearing somebody say some words. They had to make the causes. They all made incredible efforts, he says. That paragraph, second column, page 66. None became happy overnight. They all made incredible efforts. They all struggled. So if you struggle, join the crowd. They all strove wholeheartedly. I mean, I have.
Yeah.
Okay? And it takes striving wholeheartedly or you won't get there. Okay? Some nights they chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo through their tears. But these were by no means tears of despair. Rousing courage, they pledged not to be defeated and to definitely become happy. They transformed the darkness of misfortune and made the sun of hope and happiness rise in their lives. They transformed and made, is what that says. Nor was their experience limited to themselves. Throughout Japan and around the world, members who have been enacting dramas of transforming karma and thereby illuminating the light of hope, the lives of many people with whom they have connections. Pardon me. Throughout Japan and around the world, members have been enacting dramas of transforming karma and thereby illuminating with the light of hope the lives of many people with whom they have connections. These are the victorious dramas of Soka. Bottom of page 66, second column. Building a society of respect for human life and human beings. In closing, I would like to speak from a broader perspective. President Kate is saying to you. So open your mind. At the beginning of this section, we find the words, now Japan. This shows that the Daishonin was concerned not only with the happiness of individuals, but that he also directed his attention to the nation and society at large. Of course, this is not limited only to the one country of Japan. The Daishonin points out the one factor that determines the direction of not only each individual, but of the nation and society as a whole. That is, whether people are enemies of the Lotus Sutra or whether they have faith in the Lotus Sutra. In contemporary terms, this means that everything depends on whether the principles of respect for the dignity of life and respect for human beings taught in the Lotus Sutra become the spirit of the age, or whether society descends into a callous, cold-hearted era in which life is devalued and people disrespected. And why is he able to say that? Because what does society reflect? Always. The karma of the people inhabiting it. What does the environment always reflect? The karma of the people inhabiting it. That's what he's basically saying there. Okay? The Daishonin points out the one factor that determines the direction is of not only each individual, but of the nation and society as a whole. That is, whether people are enemies of the Lotus Sutra or whether they have faith in the Lotus Sutra. In contemporary terms, this means that everything depends on whether the principle of respect for the dignity of life and respect for human beings taught in the Lotus Sutra become the spirit of the age, or whether society descends into a callous, cold-hearted era in which life is devalued and people disrespected. The Daishonin says, now Japan, in becoming an enemy of the Lotus Sutra, has invited misfortune from 1,000 miles away. If, as believed, Nichiren wrote this letter in 1281, it was a time when people were extremely worried about the possibility of a second Mongol invasion. In fact, that invasion did take place that April. We can surmise that the Daishonin was not only making an obscure assumption, but spoke directly to the fear and anxiety that must have filled the country. But his message is also that believers in the Lotus Sutra, believers in the Lotus Sutra will never be swept away by a swirling tide of misfortune, no matter how bleak the times or the situation. Let me read that again. Bottom of page 67, first column. But his message is also that believers in the Lotus Sutra, so you can be in a society that's upside down, but you don't have to be upside down. And by you not being upside down, you will affect others that will then no longer be upside down. And gradually, person by person, you will change society. You will change life for everyone by just bringing forth your own Buddhahood. Okay? Exactly. That's what the whole point he's making here is. But his message is also that believers in the Lotus Sutra will never be swept away by a swirling tide of misfortune, no matter how bleak the times or the situation. The network of good formed by people who embrace the Lotus Sutra can break the cycle of misery afflicting a nation and redirect it toward peace and security. The disciples of Nichiren Daishonin have the mission of fundamentally transforming times of misfortune and misery through the philosophy of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. Through doing, it's the Risho and Kokoran, making it a reality. That is Kosen Rufu. That establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land is Kosen Rufu. Humanism is the basis of the SGI. Page 67, second column. 40 years ago, in September 1974, I visited Russia, Tolstoy's homeland, for the first time. It was still then the Soviet Union, a socialist state. Many criticized my decision to go, asking why a religious leader would visit an atheist country. My answer was simple: because there are people there. I will go anywhere there are people. With this commitment, I embarked on my trip, which for me is a treasured memory. During my visit, Soviet Premier Alexei Kosygin asked me, "What is your basic ideology?" Now again, when he took these trips to China and he was talking to Zhou Enlai, and to Russia, he's talking to Alexei Kosygin, he talked to everybody, but I think from Brezhnev on, if I'm not mistaken. Certainly, who was the last one with the spot on his head? Gorbachev. He's had a dialogue with Gorbachev that's been ongoing, okay? He knew President Hu of China, the guy that was picked up in Hu Jintao. He knew him from the time he was a youth corps guy, okay? And in America, we new American Buddhists were kind of like going like, yeah, well, why are you going there to talk to those communists? Right. Okay? But that was the limitation of our mentality to perceive the people of China as being human beings, or the people of the Soviet Union as being human beings. Yes. They were communists. Okay? And, okay? So President Ikeda broke through all that. And if you think he didn't take a bunch of shit for doing that, he was the only one that did anything now outrageous. Name somebody else that talked to Zhou Enlai from the West. I don't know. I don't think so. I can't think of anybody other than heads of state or people that would have been there as functions of official government. No way. Certainly not as common philosophical people. Like Alexei Kosygin saying, what is your basic ideology? So that shows a curiosity. All right? Without hesitation, I replied, President Ikeda says, I believe in peace, culture, and education, the underlying basis of which is humanism. Yeah. We of the SGI have advanced with a positive spirit based on those beliefs. SGI members in their respective places and societies have raised high the banner of humanism and brought great flowers of value creation to bloom. The believers in the Lotus Sutra of which the Daishonin spoke are today none other than us, the mentors and disciples of Soka, dedicated to realizing the great vow for Kosen Rufu as proud followers of Nichiren Daishonin. We are the harmonious body of believers united in the spirit of many in body, one in mind. Today, in the 21st century, all around the globe, we clearly demonstrate the truth of this declaration that those who now believe in the Lotus Sutra will gather fortune from 10,000 miles away. Looking at our present human world in light of the Daishonin's words, I wish simply to ask, what is it that truly constitutes fortune or happiness today? Happiness is found in creating value. First column, page 68, on the last page of this lecture. First Soka Gakkai President Tanesaburo Makaguchi came to see that happiness in life is found in creating value. If that is the case, then our efforts to create value by spreading the flowers of culture, the light of education, and the way to peace based on Buddhist humanism constitute the work of bringing fortune and happiness to the entire world. It is you, the outstanding members of the SGI, who are shouldering this enormous task. As human flowers whose fragrance is like the sandalwood, you embrace everyone around you with your warm smiles and gain everyone's trust. The fanfare announcing the opening of a new era of worldwide Kosen Rufu has sounded. A wonderful age has arrived. My trustworthy fellow members, my dear young friends, burning with a passionate new vow for Kosen Rufu, let us continue our courageous struggle together. Okay? And we're really lucky today to have our very, very, very good friend Jean, another islander from a different island, from a different country. Can't believe that this is the first time she's been back around the table in 3 years, but we are so pleased to have her with us, and we want to acknowledge that to everybody that's watching. Thank you for coming, Jean, all this way.
Thank you.